Hey everyone, I wanted to make an Orc Codex review and first impressions video. So here are my thoughts on the new book, some of the major changes, some winners, some losers, and a general feeling of where I think Orcs are headed in ninth edition. I'm not going to go over every single little thing in the book. There are lots of channels that already do that. They've done that. You can find those. So I'm just going to go over the things that I want to talk about and kind of what the big major changes are to maybe help new players and just kind of talk about things I think are important. So remember that this information is all based on the leaked images and online articles from Games Workshop and the community site. It's all based on information and leaked pictures of the actual codex. So all this should be accurate. I don't have a physical copy of the codex, but I basically have a scanned version. They're leaked everywhere. And the codex is out in the real world. So also, just please remember, like, it's a new book. There's some rules. There might be some mistakes I've made. May have read something wrong. So I do my best to try and proofread and double check everything, but there might be some errors. If there are, please let me know. Help out other people. If there's anything egregious, definitely bring it to my attention because I need to know as well. So, got my trusty squig here. Yes. So, let's get started. Alright, so my initial thoughts are that this book is good. It's a positive thing. There's kind of been a lot of back and forth and negativity regarding the new Orc Codex on like Facebook and forums and stuff. But as somebody who's playing Orcs since 5th edition, I can say I'm generally pretty excited about the book. I think there are a few kind of weird head-scratching like things in the book. But overall, it seems like it's a strong codex, and I think it brings Orcs into 9th edition pretty well. My first sort of glance over everything and when the rules were leaked and coming out is that I think some of the like wackiness and like fun kind of things have been taken out or toned down, but in its place is just like a solid set of rules and units with good stats, good abilities, and it feels kind of like the older editions of Orcs. The 8th edition codex was really unique and really good, and different than kind of the other ones. And so I think we're a little spoiled and trying to remember, like, if you're brand new to Orcs, 8th is the only one you knew. But for somebody who's played them for a while, this feels a little bit more like the previous books. And with that, so it feels like a little more old school Orcs, where they're kind of more like ramshackle and weird, but they're also like really brutal and really scary. And not that the 8th edition one wasn't that, but I think they had kind of the more wackiness and like re-rolling dice and like doing all this fun stuff and like exploding sixes, which is really fun. But this feels a little bit more back in the day where it's just like big, tough, brutal dudes in really crazy vehicles and stuff kind of just coming to smash your face. It's more like in your face, tough and brutal, and like that classic kind of Orc feel, which I think is actually kind of good. So here's just going to be some of the major changes going through. So most of these have been either leaked online or shown in the codex on images, or just straight up shown on the community website. So you may have already seen these. If you have, feel free to skip ahead, but I'll go over them now. So a big one is that the Daka Daka rule is changed. Daka Daka was where when you rolled a 6 to hit with any ranged weapon, you got an additional shot. That's now gone. So it's now been replaced with the Daka weapon type. So most assault guns have become either Daka or they've become heavy. And a Daka gun is now something that gets extra shots if it's within half range. It's sort of like an Orc version of rapid fire. So this is a pretty big change that Orcs are going to need to get used to. The 6 giving extra shots was a really fun rule, but like at the end of the day, it was kind of what you'd call like a time vampire, in the sense that it took a lot of time to like count your dice, separate them out. Oh, I'm bad moons. I'm re-rolling ones. Okay, those gave extra sixes. Now I roll dice for those sixes. Oh, some of those were ones, so let me re-roll those. Like, it takes a ton of time, and at the end of the day, it didn't usually yield much. And so ninth is trying to reduce re-rolls, trying to reduce sort of that fiddly, time-wasting stuff. And so this is, I think, a pretty good solution to that. And it basically evens out, gives you more shots in the long run. The one thing that I don't like about this initially is that it's not like rapid fire, where rapid fire doubles the shots. So if it's rapid fire 1, if you're in half range, you get 2. Like, that's easy to remember. Every DACA weapon is different. So it might be like DACA 3-2, or DACA 5-3, or DACA 6-4. Like, they're all sort of different depending on each weapon. And so initially, I think it's going to take a little while for people to remember what DACA stats their guns have, which is going to take time and be kind of, okay, wait, what's this one? Let me look it up. Let me pull the Codex out. Oh, okay, what's the difference between like a big shooter versus a regular shooter versus a super shooter versus, this. So it'll take a few games, but then I think in the end it'll end up being faster. So I'm fine with the change ultimately. It just sort of changes a few things. It's not a big deal. The next one is Here We Go. So this used to be where you could re-roll one or both dice when you charged. Now it's just you have to re-roll both. This was totally expected for me. It falls in line with all the 9th edition standard changes to how re-rolls work in general. It's still really strong. Like, yeah, it's a little less strong, but it's still a very good rule that you just get on like most of your units. And then Mob Rule. Alright, so this one is a pretty big nerf, and it changes to Hordes of Boyz. I'm not totally against it, but it is going to be kind of more annoying. So instead of using the unit's leadership as like the number of models in the unit, or using the number of models of a nearby unit, now you just, if they're near a full strength unit, the unit that's been damaged that's taking the morale test doesn't count as being below half strength, even if it is. It basically means that your orcs are not like immune to morale like they used to be. It's a nerf, but the nerf is more like morale matters instead of morale never matters. I'm interested to see how that sort of changes the list comp and stuff. The changes to morale in 9th edition are less damaging to hordes overall. You're still going to lose guys to morale, but it's a little less punishing to hordes. It is a nerf, and I hope it doesn't kill the potential of Green Tide, especially also because Breaking Heads and some of the other stratagems and abilities we had to keep Boyz from running are now stratagems and not just like built-in abilities. So it's a thing where with smart target priority, your opponent might be able to get a lot of free kills from orcs running away by hitting multiple units so that they're always taking morale tests and guys are running away. That feels orky in the lore, like that is very accurate to the lore where the orcs are getting shot and some of them run away or whatever. But it might be a problem in game because people will always find the maximum way to play, and they might be like, yes, it's very orky to run big Green Tide blobs of 30 boys, but instead I'm just gonna run tons of like minimum squads with the same amount of boys, and it just feels weird. So we'll see. This is probably the biggest change that hurts the most. Alright, so these were hinted at, so I'll just go kind of quick. So Warbosses have now lost their WAAGH aura ability. Instead, it's been changed by a once per game ability where you can either call a WAAGH or a speed WAAGH. and that depends on what your Warboss is. If he's a regular Warboss, it's a WAAGH. If he's a War Trike, like Speed Freak boss, then he gets the Speed WAAGH. And essentially, it gives you a large bonus for your whole army for 2 turns, instead of being like an aura that he always just has. So you can look at the rules here really quick. A regular WAAGH basically boosts all your orcs in melee. It gives them the ability to advance and charge, and it gives them +1 attack for the rest of that turn. And then the second turn, they still keep the +1 attack, but they lose the advance and charge. The Speed WAAGH, it gives all your orcs and bikes some extra firepower. It lets them advance and shoot. And increases the AP value of your vehicles and bike weapons. And then second turn, it just keeps the AP bonus. The exception to this is if Ghazghkull calls a WAAGH, then he gets both. So he does what I think is called like a super WAAGH, or the whatever. Ghazghkull's WAAGH. It's both combined, which is really strong. I really like this change. I think this is a really awesome thematic change. And it'll make your army its scariest probably in turn 2 and turn 3, which is when like the meat of the game is really taking place. And it's got this theme of like the orcs are coming, you have 1 turn to stop them, then turn 2 they're just this big pile of orcs coming crashing down on everybody. I don't know, it feels cool to me. The enemy tries to take down as many orcs as possible before the tidal wave of green comes and smashes and shoots them. It will change the way orc players conduct their armies and maybe how they build and play them. And I also think it'll change the way that people play against orcs. And to me, that's always fun and exciting. I don't want the same thing over and over and over again. So another big one. Orcs, or orc boys or anything, are all now toughness 5 minimum. So this is a big boost. It kind of seemed weird at initial glance to me, because it's like, okay, so an orc is tougher than a space marine, and he's as tough as like a plague marine. That doesn't totally compute lore-wise. But at the end of the day, it's just changing stats to get an effect in the game, I guess. And it makes them feel much more resistant to basic damage. Ultimately, your boys are still going to just die in droves because they have no armor. They're kind of slow. But it is a big boost against anything that was strength 4 or 5 before. Things like bolters, like Space Marines in general. It's going to be very satisfying to watch Space Marines wound all your boys on 5s with shooting and in close combat. And I think in close combat is where it's going to matter a lot. Having that extra toughness is going to feel strong in close combat where your boys want to be. So Ramshackle has been completely changed. It now applies to pretty much every orc vehicle, not only trucks. So now if the vehicle is struck by a weapon that is strength 7 or lower, it reduces the damage of that attack by 1 to a minimum of 1. This is a pretty good boost to lighter orc vehicles, but it's not as big as some people may be making it out to be, in my opinion, because there aren't that many multi-damage shooting weapons that are below strength 8. Like, yes, there's a few, and depending on what army you're fighting, yes, but generally once it hits strength 8, then you're doing like 2 damage, 3 damage, D3 damage, meltas, missile launchers, las cannons, things like that. Having said that, in close combat, I think is where this will be really good. Things like Blade Guard are only doing 1 damage instead of 2. Anything that's like strength 7 by getting, +2 strength or +3 strength or whatever, like that does extra damage, or has a mastercrafted power sword, like all of that is just going to bounce off now, which is really good. Alright, and now specialist mobs are totally reworked. So they no longer replace an entire detachment of your army. Instead, you now select 1 unit, and then that unit replaces its clan trait and keyword with the specialist mob that you choose. There are some restrictions on what units can take the specialist mob, but generally it's like restricted to units that would actually benefit from it. So it makes sense. It's not just like needlessly restrictive. The changes are free, which is cool, but you can't duplicate them in your army. Unfortunately, I think you're giving up your clan trait, and so unless you're using a unit that is kind of contradictory to your clan, usually keeping the clan trait is going to be better. So an example would be like you take a Dakajet and you're playing Goths. So you'll give the Dakajet the Flyboys specialist mob instead of giving it Goths because it's not going to be doing anything in close combat. So then it's just like a pure bonus. But there's other ones where it's like, oh, you want your Mega Knobs to be +1 damage? Okay, but you're giving up then all the Goth stuff. So is it worth it? Like, I don't know. And some of them are just like not worth it. So we'll kind of got to see on these. Custom jobs. So they are also reworked. They no longer cost command points, which is good. Instead, they cost army points, just like war gear. So it's kind of like upgrading your Space Marine captain or apothecary or librarians. You just add some extra points to the unit and they get a special thing. They're similar to the specialist mobs in that they can't be duplicated, and with the further stipulation that they can only go on one model. It's not the unit gets them, it's the model gets it. So even if like you're running 3 Def Dreads in a unit in one slot, only one of them gets the custom job. And you can't duplicate custom jobs across your army unless you take the mech workshop, and then that allows you to. This is pretty lame. I'm kind of annoyed at these. I thought the custom jobs were really cool in the previous book and were fun and a good way to spend command points ahead of the game, and now it's kind of whatever. I really like paying points instead of command points, but I don't like that it can't be applied to the whole unit, and I don't like that I can't buy it multiple times. Like if I could pay 15 points to give the same custom job to each Dreadnought in a unit of 3, I'd be fine with that. But I can't. I give it to one guy, and it's kind of like, why? I don't know. It's just weird and kind of lame in comparison, in my opinion. So here's the clan changes. I'm gonna rank these. These are ranked, in my opinion, from best to worst, just based on the clan trait, not including anything else. So I think the best clan is Goths right now, just on my initial look. They got huge buffs in close combat. 6s to hit no longer generate additional attacks. They generate additional hits, which is super good. They also get +1 strength on the turn that they charged. So if you charge in with a pile of boys, they're all going to be strength 5. And the beast snagga boys are going to be strength 6, which is really strong. They have some more streamlined buffs, and they're just like very, very strong melee potential. I think these are going to be the best melee, one of the best like melee armies in the game, if not the best. Snake bites. They also got a big buff. Their trait is that they cannot be wounded on better than a 4+ if they're hit by anything strength 7 or lower. This seems really, really strong right away, and I know a lot of other people have been saying how strong it is, and I do agree that it is strong. But when you kind of get down to it, orcs are already toughness 5. So this really only affects this really niche realm of weapons that are strength 6 and strength 7. Which, depending on who you're playing, might matter more or less. I think you'll notice it more in close combat, where weapons might be giving like +2 strength or something like that. So your Space Marines are strength 6 or strength, whatever. That's where I think you'll start to notice it. Other things would be like bonuses to wound, like with poison, where they auto wound on a 4. It's like nope, or they auto wound on a 2 or whatever. Or things like Blood Angels, where they get +1 to wound. Now, like that won't matter. So these are like the tough orcs. So I think they're going to be more survivable, but they don't get any damage output. Freebooters are similar to before, but I think they can more reliably activate their trait. So now, just if anything with the Freebooters clan kills an enemy unit, the rest of the army is +1 to hit. for that phase. It technically does stack, but with 9th edition rules, you're capped at +1 to hit or -1 to hit. So if you're like doing multiple things that would add up to giving you minuses, the pluses will eventually even it out. I mean, that said, like, this is a pretty reliable way to get ballistic skill 4+ on your whole army, which for orcs is really good. For other armies, that's like 4+, like that's pretty normal. But for orcs, that's great. So Death Skulls, they saw some major, but in my opinion, like expected nerfs. May have gone a little too far the nerf way, but we'll see. They lost their 6-up invuln on everything, which is a small nerf. Like 6-up invuln is nice, but it's not super noticeable. It's noticeable when it comes like in those super clutch situations, but for like most situations, it doesn't really do anything. It'll be felt, but it's not huge. They could ignore mortal wounds on a 5+ now. Meh, not bad. The major change for them comes in losing their ability to reroll a hit, a wound, and a damage per unit. Now it's just a single hit or wound. So that's major. It's still good, and it's more in line with like salamanders and other similar abilities that give that. The good thing is that they do still maintain their obsec rules on all infantry, not just boys, which in 9th I think is really strong. So I think like really fast moving infantry, things like commandos, min squads of boys, anything, like giving obsec to just like any orc infantry is really good to help control objectives and score points. Bad Moons, they got a rework, so now they have +6 inches to all their DACA type guns. So this basically lets them activate the extra shots from a little bit further away. And 6s to wound now also have an additional -1 AP with shooting weapons. So overall, I mean, it's not bad. I think this and Freebooters are competing for the like shooty clan, and I think Freebooters are just better because overall they're gonna be hitting more, which is going to yield more damage. But I mean, Bad Moons don't seem bad to me. I think it's more interesting to play around than just like you reroll ones to hit. Blood Axes, nothing really changed. They have the cover save if they're being shot at from more than 18 inches away, which is kind of because orcs don't really have saves, so they get like a save, which then gets just rendered away to being no save again. It'll help with vehicles though, which is nice. They do still have the ability to fall back and then either shoot or charge. And I think a lot of people don't consider that to be as strong as it is. Maybe it's just the way that I play or the people that I play against, but I think it can be really strong if used correctly, especially with things like commandos or storm boys or something that has a long like movement or can get in fast, as you can kind of like ricochet between units to go get the thing that you actually want to fight. I think it makes them pretty flexible, and it kind of gets overlooked. I don't think it's as good as like Goths or something that are just going to crush people, but I think it's better than people give it credit for. All right, and then last, I'm sad. My evil sons. Unfortunately, I think they're at the bottom. I think they're the worst clan trait of all of them, like pretty much by far. They now get +1 inch to their movement, or 2 inches if it's a speed freak unit, and +1 inch on advance. They can also advance and fire assault weapons at full ballistic skill, which is the same as before. But the big thing is that they lost their ability to get +1 inch on the charge roll, which was so good. So that's gone. I don't know why that's gone. I mean, it was very, really strong, but it wasn't like game-breakingly strong or anything. So now, like, the major reason I think that they saw a big nerf to this is because of the new DACA rule. So a lot of the guns that previously were assault guns have now become DACA guns. DACA type guns, which means they don't benefit from this moving and assaulting thing. A lot of the guns that are still assault are flamer weapons that don't care because they auto hit. So, oh, I don't get a -1 to hit with my flamer that auto hits anyway. It doesn't matter. There's like very few weapons that part of the trait actually helps, because a lot of those guns either became heavy or DACA. So the assault doesn't really do anything, which is kind of frustrating to me. If DACA weapons counted as assault weapons, that would be insanely good, but they don't. So that part of their trait's kind of useless. I think like it's also kind of extra useless because I think a lot of Evil Sun's lists are going to be built around a speed wall, and the speed wall already gives that bonus to you regardless of what clan you're taking. So like you could be freebooters and being extra good to hit and getting that still move and advance and shoot those types of weapons anyway. So like the clan doesn't, I don't know. It just feels odd because they don't get bonuses that they really use. Like, the one thing I will say is that I think the Evil Sun's traits or combination of traits and Warlord stuff and relics are really good. So, and some of their stratagems. So I think that could kind of maybe balance them out. But unfortunately, I think Evil Suns are kind of meh. So I'll briefly go over all the new units. A lot of you, I'm sure, have seen these already. So first, Beast Snaga Boyz. They're basically just boys with an extra strength and a built-in 6-up invuln because they have like bionics and stuff. They seem strong, but for 11 points a guy, I'm not sure they're going to be worth it. They're very cool and thematic look, especially if you're going snake bites. And they'd be fighting Goths as well. Then we got the Squighog Riders. So these are another cool snake bite themed unit, I guess. They check a lot of boxes that make a good, scary close combat unit. They have some speed, they have some durability, they hit pretty hard, they can be buffed by certain characters and abilities. And I think overall they're a really good pick, especially for Goths who hit extra hard in close combat. Then we got our new bosses. So first is the Beast Boss, who I think looks really cool. He's basically just a giant snakebite themed Warboss, or Beast Snaga is kind of snakebites. He helps your Beast Snaga units, and he hits pretty hard. He's got some good weapons. He also gets a little targeting squig on his shoulder, so he's automatically super awesome, because squigs are the best. So, more squigs the better. And then finally, we have an official Mega Boss model, Warboss in Mega Armor. So this makes that option valid again instead of being in Legends, which is great. But he only has a huge Choppa instead of a Power Claw, which makes taking the Relic Power Claw a no-go, unfortunately, on this guy. Ultimately, it's probably okay because the Killer Claw is kind of less of an auto-take, and he can still swap the Choppa out for the Relic Choppa. The Head Wappa's Kill Choppa, I think it's called, which is pretty good. But later on, you might want to pick different relics and stuff altogether. I'll go over that. There's a really cool combo I think you could do with him. He also has a little grot guy on his shoulder, which is neat. And I think this model looks really cool. Okay, so the Warboss on the Squigosaur or Mozrag Scragbad. So, holy shit, Mozrag Scragbad is so good. Like, he's so strong. And he looks really cool. I think he's easily one of the best characters in the game for just pure damage output, especially for his points. He's 170 points of just like absolute murder. His model looks really cool. His rules are really good. I think he's probably the single best unit in the whole book. I know that might be, a little exaggerated, but like he's so good. The only thing is that he's snake bites, so he can't have the other clan trait. But he's basically like the snake bite version of Ghazghkull. He's kind of like that equivalent. And there's also the generic Warboss on Squigosaur, which can go with anybody. who is also very strong. He's not quite as strong, but he's also like a generic pick. I mean, it's a Warboss riding basically a great white shark that's a squig mixed with a T-Rex, like it with a gun in its head. It's so good. It's so awesome. I love this. And then we have the kill rig, the one on the left there. And this thing is also super good. So good. The kill rig, I think, is especially good. I think the model is cool. It's a little goofy and weird and ramshackle, but like that's what orcs are. It's essentially like a giant semi-truck being pulled by a rhinoceros squig, which is great. It's like a giant chariot for a warboy, which is like a weird boy for a beast snagus. And it can transport beast snagas as well. It has a ton of wounds. It is a character because it has a warboy, so it can take relics and warlord traits. Some of those are locked, but it does that. It hits really hard, does lots of damage. It's got good wounds. If this thing could carry non-beast snagas, it would be so good. Like, it would be the best thing in the book. But because it's locked to beast snagas, it's kind of less good, I think. I mean, even still, I think it's extremely good. And I expect most competitive-ish players to use one. Like, it's really good. I'm definitely going to be getting one. So here's some special little character guys. We got the Warboy. I'm kind of whatever about this guy. The model is fine. He's a good alternative for the official Weird Boy because the official Weird Boy looks terrible. But like everyone already has a Weird Boy. Like everyone's made one out of the Age of Sigmar, or just like a guy with a banner or an extra boy or whatever. You'll want him to go in the kill rig, or just have like he's cool. So I guess whatever. I think a regular. I don't think the Beast Snaga discipline is as good as the regular WAAGH powers. So meh. Then we got the Pain Boss. He's just a Beast Snaga Pain Boy. He heals cavalry and infantry instead of bikers and infantry. So he could heal the squig riders. That's pretty much the only thing. Okay, this part I'm going to go over some of the winners and some of the losers of the Codex, just giving a little bit look over. So let's go over the winners. So these are units or rules I think saw like the biggest buffs or overall just good. Some might be for aesthetic reasons, others might be because of rules. A lot of them are both, and this will include the new models as well. So relics and traits. I think there are actually some pretty good relics and warlord traits in this book, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. I think they're going to make orc characters very strong and can pump out a lot of damage, which I'll get to in a second here. So they're sort of stepping a little more away from like the aura characters that are like a chaplain that buffs everybody or like a captain that gives rerolls. And I think they're just embracing the like orky nature of like going up and just crushing people. They're like, I don't care about you boys. I don't care about these guys. I'm going to be here to just kill the biggest and baddest thing I can. So they're not providing bonuses. They're just getting really beefed up themselves, which I think is actually really fun. And I think they can make really cheap orc characters really strong, and that can be really fun. Piggybacking off of that, we've got Warbosses characters / Gazkul. Like Warbosses and all types are really effective for their points now, I think. They saw some survivability buffs in the form of added invuln saves, the ability to take relics that makes them stronger or more durable. The new Squigosaur boss is really fast, really killy, and well costed. The only downside to things like Warboss is that you can only take one per detachment, which is expected. That's the same with like a Space Marine captain or whatever. So it makes sense thematically. Like otherwise, I think you'd take like 5 Warbosses in an army because they're really good. Next, kill rig. Like I said, it's really good. Like it's bonkers strong, I think. It's basically just like a super killy battle wagon mixed with a psyker character. Like it's so good, and the model's pretty cool. All right, commandos. Holy shit, I cannot get over how good commandos are. So the new models look awesome. I love the new commando models. They're now toughness 5, like all orcs. And for 1 extra point, they're only 1 more point than a boy, which is 10 points. They are 10 points. Boys are 9 points. You get an extra cover save bonus, +1 to wound if your enemy is near terrain. They can infiltrate, setup, deep strike type setup. They can get some special weapons that boys can't. And you can add that with like all your Clinton traits and things. The only thing is that they're an elite slot instead of a troop slot. So like it's a huge win for these guys. For 1 extra point, you get so much utility out of them, and they're just like way better than boys, but they're not troops. I expect them to be on the table. Like I expect everybody to have like 1 or 2 units of commandos because they're really good. Def Dreads. So I think Def Dreads are going to be pretty good. They have reduced points overall. They can now just take 4 claws. They don't have the saws don't exist. It's just claws now. They still have a lot of weapon options. They can be taken in squads of 3 per heavy slot, and they act independently after deployment. They don't have to stay together. Ramshackle helps them. It makes these guys a lot more survivable in close combat, especially against like elite infantry, things like Space Marines and hard-hitting stuff that does multiple damage, as long as the strikes are below strength 8. Scorchers are now 12-inch range, and because they're vehicles, they can fire in close combat as long as they don't have blast, which just gives them extra damage, which is great. I can see double Scorcher, double Claw Def Dreads being really cool. I can see quad Claw Def Dreads being really cool. For shooting things, I could see like quad custom Mega Blasted Def Dreads being really cool. Like I think you can have some really neat combos here, and they're not that expensive, and so you could have a lot of like pretty survivable killy Def Dreads, which is really exciting. Burna Boys. Oh, finally, Burna Boys are back, I think. They're a winner of the Codex. I don't think they're like insanely strong, but they have won a lot of good things. They're now the same. Like their guns are now the same as a standard flamer, so it's 12-inch range, strength 4, D6 auto hit. It's none of this like D3 half thing getting extra AP. Like they just all have flamethrowers, which is great. They did lose their AP, their like rending ability in close combat, but it's replaced with a stratagem now. I don't think you're really gonna care because you're just gonna be roasting dudes. You could put them in a truck, put them in a wagon, zoom them around, burn stuff, which is cool. I'm excited to bring the fire truck. The fire truck is going to be back. All right, DACA jets. These put out a ton of shots for 120 points. They're still super fragile, but they're also only 120 points. And with a speed wah, they just will shoot so much. Like DACA jets, like a lot of DACA. I definitely think Bad Moons are freebooters. These are going to be like a staple. I think with Speedwa active, if you give them all the super shooters you can, they shoot like 42 shots per vehicle. So you have like 2 or 3 of these. Like that's so much. It's so much DACA. It's great. Squig buggies. Yes, all hail the Squig overlords. Squig Buggy went from like one of the worst units in 8th edition to I think one of the best in 9th. It's now an indirect fire like mobile artillery platform, and it's only 90 points, so it's very reasonably costed. I love this model, and now it has really good rules, so everybody wins. I think it's going to be an auto-include in pretty much most armies, just for some backfield objective holding and supporting fire, because it has indirect fire, so it can just sit behind something on an objective and just lob squigs into the enemy, which is hilarious. And then we got Warbikers. So Warbikers got a huge buff from the DACA weapon type, as well as like the Speedwa, and just normal. They have built-in -1 exhaust, built-in -1 to hit because of their exhaust clouds. They're fast. They hit reasonably hard. They're basically just boys. They have pretty good toughness and wounds because they're just boys on bikes. And they can put out a ton of shots, especially with speed while active. I think they're going to be a must take. If you're trying to do a speed wall and you're trying to be competitive in any way, you're probably going to take 3 squads of 8 or something like that. Okay, so battle wagons. I'm hesitantly putting battle wagons on the winners list. They're still very expensive, which I think is probably why they might not be. And they're not that much better, but they did get some buffs. So first off, they now have a 3-up save instead of a 4-up save, which is huge. This means that they'll be getting a save of some kind against most tank-killing weapons. Sure, it might only be a 5-up or a 6-up, but that's better than nothing. They can now also take a custom job to give them an invuln, which is cool. And hilariously, if a wagon is open-topped and it doesn't take a big heavy weapon, it can carry Ghazghkull, which is awesome. So he takes 18 of the 20 slots, but you can chuck him in here and zoom him around like Mighty Joe Young in that semi-trailer when they're on the freeway, and just put Makari and a mech or something in there to be his tamers. In case the wagon blows up, you roll those dice, and he wins. You kill the mech or Makari instead of Ghazghkull. Because you'd have to have some seriously bad luck to roll 3 ones. But yeah, I don't know that that's good, but I think it's hilarious and really cool. And I have a wagon already built perfectly for him. It's going to be the Gaz wagon. It's going to be great. Okay, now we'll go on to the losers. Grots. Good God, Grots are terrible now. I mean, they already were terrible, but they're so bad. I pretty much can't say enough negative things about them. They're still 5 points a model, which is way too expensive. They don't get clan traits. They don't have OBSEC anymore. They're the same cost as a guardsman, and they're literally worse in every way except maybe that their model is really small so they can stay out of line of sight behind low-lying barricades and stuff. They're almost completely pointless. Which the only thing they're good for is doing backfield objective actions, and even then, for marginally more points, you get 10 shoot-a-boys, and then they'll at least do something else. They're just so bad. The Grots are just so bad. I don't know why Games Workshop doesn't want... I mean, I get that they don't want them to replace Boyz, because they make them too good. No one will take Boyz. They'll just take Grots. But you basically just removed Grots from the book. It's okay, well, they're terrible. They're so bad. They're so bad. Next, the Custom Force Field Big Mech. I've kind of gone back and forth on this. It's more of a side grade than a straight-up nerf. So the Custom Force Field is now a 6-up invuln to everything within 6 inches, instead of a 5-up invuln for things wholly within 9. So it means you're covering more units, more of your army, but giving them all a worse save than before. So I think rules as written, this also applies in melee, which is interesting. We'll have to see. I'm not sure that the 6-up invuln will really do much either way. It's fine. If you're bringing lots of guys, you'll start to notice it will save some people. I'm still kind of undecided, but overall, I think he has a less obvious use, because 6-up invuln is just kind of eh. There is a stratagem to make it overcharge, which increases the range and makes it a 5-up invuln, but then once that's done, you can't use it for the rest of the game. So that might be one where you pop it turn 1 or 2 when you're starting to fight and gonna start losing guys, and then you just ignore it for the rest of the game. The Morkanaut and Gorkanaut. Again, it's kind of a bit of a side grade. Overall, I think it's a loss for them. mainly just because now they're Lords of War. So they got a hefty wounds increase. They went up to 24 wounds, and they got some changes to their guns and attacks. And they get all the bonuses that like being a Lord of War has, like moving over units and things like that. But because they're Lord of War, they take their own detachment now and cost you command points. That's kind of the biggest killer for me. It might not matter for certain armies, but like I was kind of hoping to take one now, but now I'm more hesitant. I do think taking 3 for like an Orc Knight list could be really fun, but we'll see. The command points might not be such a big deal, as we'll get to later, because the Orc stratagems are kind of meh. So you might not really care about command points that much. Alright, some clan traits. So, like I said, Evil Sons, they just don't really seem to offer many bonuses as an army anymore. Like, the things that make them strong, or were strong, are mostly irrelevant or gone. The only thing that keeps them from being flat out terrible is that they have some like really good relics and stuff like that. I just think like all the other clans give better benefits than what Evil Sons do. Bikers and buggies are pretty much better like in every clan, depending on how you want to run them. And then slow things like I'm gonna go off on Evil Sons for a second here. The best thing about the Evil Sons clan trait makes all the things that lore-wise Evil Sons don't want to use better, and doesn't really help the ones that they want to be taking. Like your buggies and bikes are already really fast. They don't need to move more. And they don't really get any other benefits. Maybe bikers do. But where the bonus really helps is like Death Dreads, Boyz, Commandos, like slow-moving infantry, which is not what Evil Sons is about, get the most benefit from Evil Sons. So like you would see an Evil Sons that's like an Evil Sons horde that's really fast, instead of an Evil Sons thing in a bunch of trucks and stuff. Like it just feels weird, because they don't get also that like charge bonus and things that could help like the bikes. And just changing assault to DACA, like, or to heavy. So things like Def Coptas that are heavy, so they can't advance and shoot. Like, I don't know. It just is annoying. And then same with like Death Skulls. They saw a pretty big hit. That was kind of expected, just because like they were by far the best clan to take in almost any situation. So now this at least brings them in line with other clans, but to do that they did have to lose a lot, so they are like a loser of the Codex. They may have gone a little bit too far, but I still think they're strong. Like OBSEC is still really, really strong. So they're brought more in like the tone of 9th edition, but it is a blow to Death Skulls. Alright, other losers. Specialist mobs. I'll need to play around with these more, but my gut is telling me that these are mostly pointless. For like competitive strength wise and things like that. Like if you want to use them because they're fun and thematic and whatever lore reasons, like great. It's just like they can only go on one unit. Multiple units can't do it, so you can't stack like a bunch of like Burnas and Burna bombers and stuff in one detachment and then make the whole detachment pyromaniacs. It's like one unit gets it, which is like meh. Also because you lose your clan trait, they usually just get worse. Like there's some very specific uses, but like having your clan trait is probably better for whatever that thing is than most of what the specialist mobs give you. So instead of them being like a cool themed customization thing, I think the specialist mobs are mostly a trap to make units worse or just to make them different, which is kind of unfortunate, just because I think they're cool. Like some of them are pretty good, and depending on what clan you're taking, they might be useful. But they're not like, ooh, I'm really excited to take these. It's like, well, I don't get any bonuses, so I might as well give my guy this, which is just sort of, I don't know. It's less interesting. Custom jobs are kind of the same. You pay points for them, which is great, but you can only upgrade one model. Like, that's so dumb. And you can't duplicate the job. So, because you're only upgrading one model, it can make units like taking the jobs seem a little weird, as one model is better than the others, but they have to stay together. So if you're giving one model like extra movement or something, the other two still have to remain in coherency, so it doesn't help. Like, there's just weird things. And previously, like, it was a great way to stack buffs on like a unit with CP, so like the whole unit would get it. Now it's just that one guy. It's kind of like, I don't know. I wish I could just pay to give it to multiple guys in the same unit. Like, that'd be fine. All right, and lastly, we got the stratagems. So orc stratagems are pretty mediocre. We lost a lot of the staple stratagems like Unstoppable Green Tide, and things like that. And they're replaced with sort of like more niche stratagems that won't matter that much. I personally don't really like stratagems in the game a whole lot. I'd much rather just have like solid built-in rules that you play around. And so I'm kind of glad they're becoming less auto-use and things across ninth as a whole. But the orc ones, even with that, are like really kind of lackluster. There are some fun ones like Kareen. And the clan-specific ones, I think, are pretty good. But overall, I just think you're going to be saving them for, like, boring utility purposes. Like counter-assault, insane bravery, breaking heads to do morale, counterattacking, using your, like, rerolls for special attacks and things. And I think you'll be tempted to use a lot of them pre-game for extra relics and traits and the teleporta and stuff. Because those are really good. And during the battle, the stratagems are kind of like whatever. So it's a little bit different, but it is a little bit disappointing, I guess. And maybe Boyz. So we're gonna talk about Boyz. We're gonna go off on Boyz for a little bit here. So let's talk about Boyz. So a big question I think is circulating around is, are Boyz or Beast Snagga Boyz any good? To be honest, I don't know. I know that's not helpful. My gut says yes, they're still okay, but we'll kind of have to see. There are some pros and cons. The pros are they're all toughness 5 and choppas are -1 AP, which is really good. Back in the day, like if somebody was like, hey, you're 8-point boys, for one more point, they become toughness 5 and their choppas get AP -1, I'd be like, heck yeah, sign me up. But when you look at like the landscape of 9th edition, a boy now is 9 points. I think 9 points is actually still too expensive. Because they used to be 8 points. And at 8, they still kind of felt too expensive, even though they were worse. So now they got slightly better, but they're also more expensive. So I don't know if they overall got that much better, and before they were kind of meh. So, like if they stayed at 8, they'd be like totally fine. They'd be really good. At 9, I'm not sure. In certain clans like Snakebites and Goths, I think they could be a lot better because Snakebites are just going to be overall a little more survivable, and Goths are going to hit way harder, so they do way more damage for their points, or they die less easily for their points. So I think their uses are going to kind of be all or nothing. You're either going to go like all in and make like a giant green tide of like 100+ orc boys, or you're just going to take like minimum squads and run them around and try and do actions or like speed bump and do little objective things. Like run them next to some commandos and they run in and like the commandos kill stuff, they kill stuff, the orc boys have obsec, so they stay on the objective and the commandos go off and do something else. Yeah. So I will say one thing, which makes me sad, is like I think Shoota Boys are basically just completely dead, except for maybe Bad Moons and Freebooters. Given the new Daka rules and the buffs that Choppa's got in Melee, like I just don't see why you would ever take Shoota Boys, especially if you're foot slogging them. As you'll want to be advancing every turn, which means they aren't shooting, because shooters aren't assault anymore, they're Daka. So if you advance, you can't shoot the Daka guns. Maybe there's an argument to take them in trucks or in battle wagons and have them like zoom around and support guys, or to run like 10-man minimum units in the backfield to just guard objectives, do actions, and like plink off wounds from random squads and stuff. Now for beast snaggers, I think they're arguably worse than regular boys, just because they're 11 points a model. So they gain an extra strength and they get a 6-up invuln save. They can't benefit, or they can benefit from like the beast snagger buffs, which is cool. But like ultimately the 6-up invuln, it's like okay, whatever. It's not really that good. And paying the extra points for strength 5 is good, but I don't know that it justifies 2 points. I can see taking like a unit or two of them and throwing them in a kill rig or something as like an objective taker, but I don't think going masses, like a big mass of beast snaggers, is going to be a good idea, just because I think they're just too expensive. The big reason is because like compare both of these to commandos. Like commandos are 10 points, so they're between the two. They're the same as a boy, but commandos, for 1 extra point, they lose obsec unless they're death skulls, but they get the infiltrate setup, they can do the deep strike setup, they get the extra cover save, they have better weapon options, they have the throat slit as rule, so they're +1 to wound if they're near terrain. They have the distraction grot, the bomb squig, like they have so much more utility in general. And I think they're going to kind of just replace small squads of boys and are like the happy medium between boys and beast snaggers. So I see it either as three things. You're either going to be doing like a giant green tide with tons of bodies, minimum squads in the backfield with commandos for forward objective taking, or you're going to do like minimum squads in the backfield with beast snaggers and a kill rig or something. That's pretty much the only way I see this working. Maybe multiple squad or multiple size units of boys just like swarming the table to try and get your opponent to like overkill squads and waste shots, but like I don't know. Then you're just taking tons of morale tests and they're all just gonna run away. So like I don't know. Boys are weird. I gotta play with them, but it's hard because it's like I don't want to buy 100 boys and then be like, oh, all these guys suck. So we'll see. Alright, so now I'm going to just go over like a few little fun combos. There's tons more in the book. These are just like ones that I probably am going to try out right away. From my this is like first glance stuff. I'm sure I can get and find some better stuff. So first one, I think this guy's going to be really fun, is the super tough Warboss. Warboss don't give a fuck. So what you do is you take a Mega Armor Warboss, or any Warboss, but I think the Mega Armor Boss is better. You give him the Art as Nails Warlord trait, so that he's -1 to wound, which is very strong. You then take the Super Cyborg Body to give him a 4-up invuln, and he takes half damage from all sources. It's not -1 damage. He takes half damage. So a 4 damage weapon is doing 2 damage, which is like so good. So he can be super tanky. He's strength 6, he's toughness 6, -1 to wound, he has a 2-up save, a 4-up invuln, and he takes half the damage. And you can heal him with like a pain boy and stuff because he's infantry. So this means that strength 5 or less wounds him on 6s. Strength 6 wounds him on 5s, and strength 7 to 11 wounds him on 4s. So it takes a strength 12 hit to wound him on a 3+. And the only things that do that are like Redemptor Dreadnoughts and stuff. So I think he can go head to head with a lot of really strong killy characters or squads and just shrug off tons of damage. Like even somebody like Gilliman, if you math it out, may have a hard time one-shotting him. Like if you roll pretty average for both, Gilliman might not kill him in one turn, which is crazy because he's like a third the cost of Gilliman. Of course he's weak to mortal wounds, but like everything is weak to mortal wounds. So for his cost, he hits pretty hard and he's really tanky, which I think is just going to be really fun. Okay, this one's Deredder War Rig, and you'll see the asterisk. I'm not sure how one of these rules interactions works, and it needs a clarification. So this is an Evil Sunz combo, as you need the Rezmeka's Redder Paint relic, which is a great relic. So if he's your warlord, he has to take the Beast Gob as his warlord trait, which is kind of meh. But as he isn't a Warboss, you probably don't want him to be your warlord. You want the Warboss to be the warlord. But you can still give him a relic because he's a character. So what you do is you give the Killrig the Rezmeka's Redder Paint relic, and what that does is it gives him 2 inches additional movement, which is awesome, for a 3-inch total extra movement because he's Evil Sunz. Then the main thing the paint does that's great, though, is it makes all enemy units within engagement range always fight last, which is very good. And especially because given the size of the model, with some good consolidations, you might be able to get multiple units in a fight. Like, and if they heroically intervene into you, you're like, cool, you're always fighting last. So you go in, you turn him sideways, you hit like two units in a character, everybody's fighting last, and then the rest of your army can dogpile on them, and everybody's going first for multiple combats, which is very good. When you charge, it's not as big a deal because you're always going first anyway. But it can really help if it's a prolonged fight. Because the Killrig is also a Psyker, because it has a Warboy on it, you can give him the Frazzle Psychic ability, which makes all enemy units within 9 inches take D3 mortal wounds on a 4+. Then, if you successfully cast, this makes your War Tower attacks get the D3 shots instead of 1, which all auto-hit, and they're las cannon profiles. And because it's a vehicle, you can just shoot in close combat anyway. So you basically just run him in, get him stuck in with as much stuff as possible, make them all fight last, you zap them with Frazzle. It would be on your next turn. You zap them with Frazzle, you shoot everything with the Killrig into them with your psychic stuff, and I don't know, it just sounds fun. So it's not incredibly powerful, but he essentially has multiple like debilitating auras around him, and I think he could be great in like a secondary attachment to help out, like a Goth's detachment or something. So here's the weird caveat, which if somebody has figured this out, great, I'd like to know. I'm not sure how this works because the wording is weird. So here's the thing. So the Rezmeka's Redder Paint states that the Warlord gets these bonuses. And I assume this is typically because your Warlord is like the default for taking a relic. And you're only able to be given, like somebody else can only be given a relic with the stratagem, right? So if the unit with the Redder Paint must be your Warlord to get the bonuses, then this only works if you make the Killrig your Warlord, which is not ideal. Because you lose out on the WAAGH or Speed WAAGH. It might need some clarification because it might just be saying like you get the plus 2 inches to your movement. This Warlord makes the always fight last ability, which is like why? So then you only put it on your Warlord, I guess, but I don't know. So we'll need to see. So take this one with a grain of salt. It might be fun. It might be kind of meh. If that's the case, like it makes the Redder Paint way worse for Evil Sunz, which again makes Evil Sunz bad. Or not bad, but worse, which is annoying. But whatever. Alright, last one. He's kind of fun. The Mortal Wound Wartrike. So you take a Goth's Wartrike, you give him the Iron Gob Relic, and the Roadkiller Warlord trait. You then use the Ram and Speed stratagem when he charges. So this can potentially pile on tons of mortal wounds when you charge. So on a 2+, you deal D3 mortal wounds because of Ram and Speed. On a 2+, you deal D3 mortal wounds from Roadkiller Boss, which is the same thing. It basically gives him that ability always. And then on a 2+, after you make your close combat attacks, you deal D3 mortal wounds to 1 unit within engagement range. So you're potentially doing 3 D3 mortal wounds plus whatever your damage is, which is really good. Like that's a lot of potential damage. So it might be great for finishing, like wounding off some wounded vehicles or a hard to kill unit, or like a hero that has like 5 wounds left, you just like drive up and you're just like boop boop. Oh look, he died, and then I'll put my attacks into something else, and then I'll also attack. Like, it could be pretty fun. It could be risky running him into like some hard to kill units that you want to like nuke down with mortal wounds, but it could also pay off big. It's risky to throw him in, but like that's kind of what orcs do. And there's more combos. I could go on and on. Maybe I'll make another video later. But there is a trend here. Orc characters, particularly war bosses, are insanely good in this codex. I think you may start to see some Hero Hammer orc lists that are going to be like triple Warboss, triple Squig boss or Squigosaur boss, like things like that, piling stuff on kill rigs. Like, your heroes are going to be really strong and have really strong combos. So that's my sort of leaks and like overview, review, thought dump for everybody. So where are orcs headed? Well, I think it looks pretty good. There are a few things that still bother me, obviously, especially like Evil Sons. I play Evil Sons. I think Evil Sons kind of whatever. There's a few things that make me scratch my head, but like overall, I think the rules look solid. I think it's a fairly well balanced book that isn't over the top powerful, but it has some good stuff. I think orc players are going to need to rethink their lists and their tactics and their play styles. So to me, that's exciting. I'm always happy to see a shake-up like that. It refreshes the army. It makes me want to keep playing it. I don't want there to only just be like 2 styles of playing. It's like play this, because everything else is bad. Like, I don't want orcs to be 18 mech guns with grots as troops, because that's not what orcs are. Like, orcs are supposed to be big, chunky, loud, in your face, hitting you hard. Like, get in there, hit hard, smash the opponent. And I think this codex does that very well. So you'll kind of have to, but you'll need to change the way you think. It doesn't really rely on as many like gimmicks or auto take units, which I also think is good. And I think there's a few good potential builds here with variety of playstyles. And one thing, I've heard people moaning about online, because that's just what people do. It's important to remember that like things shouldn't be auto include or auto win buttons. That's not fun, and it isn't good for the game. Like, yes, compared to things like Drukhari or Admech, like Orcs seems lower in power, I think. But those books are overpowered. Like, those books are too good and need to be pulled down. It's not good for the game if books get too powerful. So something like this, I think it's like with solid rules, solid abilities, little things like point tweaks can make a big difference. But the rules like seem pretty solid. I think just it's better to have a solid set of rules and stats that can be adjusted minorly rather than being like way too strong and then nobody likes it, right? But like, yeah, I'm really excited for the shakeup that this is gonna do. I'm excited to get started. I'm excited to do more orcs. I just really want my codex. Like, it's annoying that the codex is out there. I can't get it. We don't know when the new one's coming out. Like, for the regular people that didn't pre-order the box, like, I don't know. That whole thing's dumb. But anyway, I am excited. Please let me know what your thoughts are on the new book. Leave a comment. Of course, do the YouTube things. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and all that. I paint on Twitch. Probably going to be doing some more orcs soon. But yeah, go ahead, give me a follow. Let me know what you think. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.